That's not bad enough. He is a maniacal Roman emperor who murdered his own mother and burned his capital down. That sounds about right.
Trump is literally Nero while the West burns.
He's not well. That's the bottom line, that the President of the United States is completely unhinged and getting worse by the day.
The people we saw the other evening at that rally, if that's his base, it's deranged.
What we are watching in the Trump presidency is worse than Watergate.
Did you hear that? Worse than Watergate, says the man who hasn't worked since Watergate. Yes, it is that bad. The left wants Trump gone tonight, but for some unfathomable reason, he is still in the White House. You can imagine how frustrating that must be. So frustrating that progressives had shifted the focus of to the United States itself. Our country, they tell us, must be bulldozed to bedrock and rebuilt according to revolutionary principles approved by the undergraduate faculty at Oberlin College and, of course, by consensus on Twitter. Step one is inviting every poor person on planet Earth to move here tomorrow to go on federal benefits at your expense. Anything less than that is racism. Watch Angela Rye explain as much on CNN.
This procedure is absolutely based on bigotry and fear-mongering. If you don't understand that your president announced his campaign by talking about building a wall to keep your president keeping no, not mine, not mine. I will never claim a bigot ever. I wish I could tell you where from Africa my ancestors came from, at least part of them, but I wouldn't know because the same bigots who are sending people back away from their children are the ones who brought my ancestors here on a spaceship.
Then where?
Congratulations.
I mean,
So, if you listen carefully, you just learned that enforcing federal law is now exactly the same as slavery. That's what CNN is telling us. You may not believe that, but it is suddenly orthodoxy on the left. In New York State, for example, Zephyr Teachout promises that if elected attorney general in this fall's election, she will start throwing ICE agents in prison.
ICE has to be abolished. And I say that as somebody who's running for one of the top law enforcement jobs in the country. And as Attorney General, I will continue to speak out against ICE. I will prosecute ICE for their criminal acts.
In other words, those who enforce the law are the real criminals, just like illegal aliens are the real Americans. And the citizens who work hard, get married, and raise their own kids are the ones who should be ashamed of themselves. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. Orwell saw it all 70 years ago. Suddenly, we are living it in real time. Dennis Prager is a radio show host, the founder of Prager University. He also just wrote a column, The Greatest Hysteria in American History, about the Russia story. He joins us tonight. Dennis, thanks a lot for coming on.
Boy, you were very eloquent. I just got to tell you that you summarized what is the greatest hysteria in American history.
But well, I guess what bothers me, it's never bothered me if people don't like a politician, any politician. I don't like a lot of politicians.
Right.
But when the rage distorts the judgment of people who are supposed to be making responsible policy and they wind up telling us that people who enforce the law are the real criminals, that can hurt your country.
Well, everything they're doing can hurt the country. I mean, calling the man a Nazi and all his supporters are Nazis, comparing the Helsinki conferences they did on MSNBC, for example, to Pearl Harbor and Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht was the opening of the Holocaust. As I wrote in my column, I think a lot of college-educated kids have no idea what the Holocaust or the Nazis were. So right now, I think for millions of young Americans, Nazi means a German Republican in the 1930s and 40s. That's the distortion. That's the evil that the left is perpetrating right now. And I might add, as a Jew, the silence of most Jewish communal groups on the desecration and trivialization of the Holocaust shows you how deep the roots of leftism are in communal life, in Jewish life, and for that matter, Protestant and Catholic life. It's a very, very serious moment we're living in.
As a literal person, I keep asking myself, how would I respond if I believed what they were saying? And I think people do believe what they're saying. So if you really thought there was a Nazi in the White House whose immigration policy was designed to hurt people on the basis of skin color, what wouldn't you do if you really thought that?
Right. Well, if you're consistent with your beliefs, I don't quite understand why you wouldn't try to murder the president and, for that matter, any Republican. A Nazi, really, or at least be wounded, or at least be beaten. You know, as Woody Allen has in one of his movies, you know, they said, well, we should take the Nazis to court and so on. He said, actually, I think a baseball bat is far more effective. I think that is what we will see. And yeah, because that's what's logical. That's what you do to Nazis.
I guess the thing that surprises me the most, having lived in Washington most of my life, is the silence from the responsible Democrats. And there are some, and I know them, actually. I don't think, for example, Chuck Schumer, much as I disagree with him, wants to destroy America or is mentally ill. Or I think he's probably appalled by a lot of this stuff. I got to believe he is. But he's not saying it out loud. Why is that?
I don't think he's appalled, frankly. I think that the belief is that anything that will work should be used. Also, this is really important because I've devoted my life to moral thinking and moral philosophy, that you don't consciously desire. I don't believe he consciously desires to destroy the United States. Of course not. But that's irrelevant. It is what you do, not what you intend, that morally counts. And what the Democrats are doing now, becoming a left-wing, no longer liberal party. Listen, Alan Dershowitz, lifelong liberal, major Hillary Clinton supporter, voted for Hillary Clinton, said to me, and people will see this in the film No Safe Spaces that Adam Carolla and I are making, coming out next year. It's not a plug for it. I just want you to know where you can actually see it. He said, as a Jew and as an American, I far more fear the far left than I do the right.
It's remarkable. Alan Dershowitz. And if you're over 30 and you grew up watching Alan Dershowitz, it's amazing we've gotten to a place
well, he's a liberal, not a leftist. And conservatives have to make that point every day. Thanks.
There are very few liberals left. I mean,
that's right. That's the point. There are. You know who the liberals are? Us conservatives.
Me, exactly. Thank you. Chris Hahn is a radio show host, and speaking of Chuck Schumer, a former staffer for Senator Schumer, and he joins us tonight. Chris, thanks a lot for coming on.
Anytime, Tucker, you know it.
So people say all kinds of lunatic things on cable TV shows. Happens on my show. I get it. I tend to kind of discount a lot of that stuff. Right, for sure. What bothers me is when office holders or people seeking to become office holders start parroting that same language. So I'm just trying to figure out what's acceptable now on the Democratic mainstream, of which you're a part. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and you just tell me honestly what you think, and it'll be a marker for where we are, I think. Reasonable people talking to each other. A, should we abolish ICE and begin criminal prosecution against ICE agents?
No, but we should reapply some real rules to ICE. I don't like the way ICE is being managed right now by the current administration, but I don't believe we should do away with it. Maybe we got to rebrand it at some point.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'm always for making federal agencies better. Doesn't bother me. That's a totally different thing. There are anywhere between 15 million and 20 million people living here illegally, illegal aliens in the country. How many can we deport?
You know, I think we should start by deporting criminals, people who are actually engaged in crimes other than crossing the border. What I don't like is what I'm hearing today about 11,000 spouses of active military families being deported by this administration under the zero tolerance policy. That alarms me. It should alarm you. It should alarm your viewers. We have men and women serving overseas in war zones and their spouses being kicked out of the country right now, and that is intolerable to me.
When you've got 20 million people, foreign nationals, living in your country illegally, still, I don't think you can call it a zero-tolerance policy. There's a lot of tolerance for illegal immigration. How many biological genders are there?
There are 2 biological genders.
See, I'm not sure you can be a Democrat. Do Americans...
look, I think people should be allowed to identify with whatever they want to be.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
And I think we should respect people's decision to call themselves what they want. But there are 2.
Look, you want to be called, I'll call you whatever you want to be called. I completely agree. It's when you start telling me that science is false, as many Democrats are, that I start to get nervous. Do you think Americans have a constitutional right to own a firearm?
Yeah, I think they do have a constitutional right to own a firearm, but I think that there should be reasonable restrictions placed on that right, and I think there should be a background check on every gun, and we should know where every gun is at all times.
Do you think it is better for children to grow up with a biological mother and father than not to?
I mean, not always, Tucker. I mean, I think it's a best case scenario if you have two
not always,
people
but
raising
is it the best? Is it the best case? Is it better? Is growing up with two parents better than being raised by a single mother in general?
Look, I was raised by a mom.
Not a tough question,
right? And she was single for a while, and it happens in America. And I think we want to see people raised by two loving parents, whether it be two moms too at some time or two dads at some time. But I think it's better to have two people in a parenting.
But is it better if they're the biological parents? Is that the best case scenario? Of course, there are lots of different ways that kids. I mean, I was raised in a non-traditional family. I get it. I'm not attacking anybody. But is the ideal the biological parents?
As long as it's a. I think they should be raised by two people who love and want them. Okay.
Just checking.
Sometimes
so we're not saying that
Tucker, in a perfect,
is that the best? Is that the best case?
World.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. In a perfect world,
you'll have two biological parents who want you, but we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a very imperfect world.
I'm not saying that we do. No.
There are some people, but there are some people. Right.
Okay, there are some people, look, there are all kinds of permutations. I'm just saying, what's the ideal? And I think many on the left are unwilling to say that the ideal is the ideal. I mean, if you could have anything, you would have two biological parents who love their kids. Let me ask you this. No, you agree? That's totally fine. I'm not going to hassle you on this.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to get attacked on Twitter for saying that.
Kids, that's great. If there are two loving men who are in a committed relationship raising a kid, I think that's a great thing.
Okay.
And if they're two loving women,
I'm not attacking anybody. I just want to know what the ideal was. But you can't say that because you're afraid of getting attacked.
I know that there are a lot of people on the right that are against that, but you know it is.
I'm not saying that, but I'm not making that. Hold on, I'm not making that case. I just want to know what the ideal is. And last question: is abortion for the purposes of sex selection, which is very common around the world, is that immoral? To abort a child because you don't like the gender. It's almost always girls. Is that okay? Planned Parenthood supports it. Do you? Is there a moral problem with that?
I don't like to cast moral judgments on anyone for any reason.
On sex selection, abortion, you're not going to judge that?
Do, but
Why?
I don't believe. Look, my Bible tells me, "Judge not, lest you yourself be judged." So I don't judge.
I'm not asking you to judge anybody. I'm not asking you to judge anybody.
Personal choices. Now that is not something I think should be appropriate, but I don't think the state should have a role in that kind of thing.
Okay, but you don't think it's appropriate. I think you're way too right-wing for the Democratic Party. So good luck on Twitter.
I think so. But I was watching. I was watching your last segment. All right, thanks.
All right. I'm sorry, we're out of time. Thank you. You are one of the last reasonable Democrats we just discovered. Well, a new hire at the New York Times has been exposed as a bigot. We don't like to call people bigots, but this is not a close call. So why do the loudest anti-racism agitators always seem to be the first ones to stoke racist sentiments? We've noticed that. We'll tell you what that's about next.
Tucker Carlson is brought to you by One A Day with Nature's Medley.
Fruits and veggies are essential to your health, but it's tough to get enough of their nutrients. New One A Day with Nature's Medley is the only complete multivitamin with antioxidants from one total serving of fruits and veggies. Try new One A Day with Nature's Medley.
No matter who rides point, there are over 10,000 Allstate agents riding sweet. Call one today. Are you in good hands?
Let your perfect truck come together at the Lincoln Summer Invitation Sales Event. Get 0% APR on select 2018 Lincoln models plus $1,000 bonus cash.
Let's see why people everywhere are upgrading their water filter to zero water. Start with water that has a lot of dissolved solids. Pour it through Brita's two-stage filter. Dissolved solids remain? What if we filter it over and over? Thank goodness Zero Water's 5-stage filter gets to all zeros the first time. So maybe it's time to upgrade. Get more out of your water. Get Zero Water.
A hotel can make or break a trip. And at Expedia, we don't think you should be rushed into booking one. That's why we created Expedia's Add-on Advantage. Now after booking your flight, you unlock discounts on select hotels, right until the day you leave. Add-on Advantage. Discounted hotel rates when you add on to your trip. Only when you book with Expedia.
Fox News Channel on Sirius XM. Your favorite shows on Channel 114. Plus, every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7 at Channel 115. Fox Nation. Find out more at foxnation.com now.
Available now with Spectrum On Demand.
Who are we if we can't protect them?
A Quiet Place. Also available now with Spectrum On Demand.
Halfway flew to this island to find his dogs. Does anybody know him?
I am not your pet. Don't ask me to fetch that stick.
Fetch
Isle of Dogs. Select the On Demand button or menu button on your remote and go to On Demand to watch now.
Do you owe money to the IRS?
I owed the IRS $66,000. I was paralyzed with fear.
Then Julia called Optima Tax Relief.
The team at Optima Tax Relief settled my IRS tax bill for a teeny tiny fraction. They really cleared the path for me to have a fresh start. It was amazing.
For your free consultation, call 1-800-606-1097.
Well, the latest member of the New York Times editorial board is named Sarah Jong, and she was exposed yesterday as kind of a lunatic and definitely a bigot. The Times didn't care much, while some on the left said the only racists were the ones who dared criticize her as an oppressed person who went to Harvard. Now, more of Jong's tweets have been exposed. She tweeted frequently about killing all men. She said, F the police routinely. She once tweeted, quote, if we're talking big sweeping bans on crap that kills people, why don't we ever talk about banning the police? As is often the case, the ones crying most loudly about bigotry are the most enthusiastic bigots. You may have noticed that, but they defend themselves by saying they can't be bigots. It's impossible. Ethan Behrman is a California radio show host, and he joins us tonight. Ethan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
I read a lot of this woman's tweets. What no one is saying is she's kind of dumb, actually, and I wonder how she got into Harvard. I mean, she's actually not a good writer, not an interesting thinker. She's totally mediocre, but whatever, a lot of mediocre people. But I think it's an interesting story for the following reason. She's making all these sweeping claims about an entire racial group, all of them negative, a lot of them angry, some suggesting violence. People say, oh, she's a racist, and the response from the left has been, you can't be racist to white people. Period. That's apparently a widely held belief on the left. Do you believe that? It's impossible to be racist to white people?
I don't think it's impossible to be racist to white people, but you miss the context of what happened here, and I do think that there's a bit of hypocrisy from the right on this one, with the insulter-in-chief being the head of the Republican Party right now. But in this case, you miss the context of the trolls attacking her first. Now, clearly she should not have reacted the way she did. However, it is a normal human reaction with both the somatic and the autonomic nervous systems to respond when under threat. So she was being attacked and responded.
No, I think it's a very fair point, but that's not what she did. I mean, people who are attacked respond. I get it. That's why I don't go on Twitter. I'm afraid I might do that, you know, and reveal myself to be unpleasant. No, I'm serious. I don't. But she wasn't responding to trolls. Actually, in every case, and I read them, there weren't individuals attacking her. And by the way, her response wasn't aimed at individuals. It was aimed at an entire, in fact, the predominant racial group in the United States. So in other words, if I say something to you that you don't like, do you respond by saying something racist? Probably not. You respond by attacking me. But that's not what she did. So why are we defending that exactly?
So she was setting an example. No, look, I mean, clearly Asian Americans historically have been subjugated and abused in this country. Do I need to bring up the internment camps?
No, they haven't.
She's from, our family's from, burn
that's silly.
Villages. But the point is if people are attacking her,
we didn't burn their villages. And hold on, not all, stop. First of all, not all Asians are the same. Her family's from South Korea.
No, clearly not.
She went to Berkeley and then Harvard Law School. There has been no organized discrimination against Koreans in this country. Like, what are you talking about? The average Korean immigrant has a higher income than the average native-born white American. So, like, there's no history of racism against Koreans here. That's just not true. Certainly not by white people anyway. I mean, honestly.
No. Neither one of us have experienced what she's experienced. I don't know exactly what she's experienced, but based on
I didn't get into Harvard Law School as a dumb person. She got in as a dumb person, which tells you, I mean, that's impressive. I get it. I don't know how that happened.
You don't get into Harvard Law as a dumb person. You don't. Harvard Law.
No, she's dumb. I read it. No, I'm not being mean. Look, I'm not attacking her. I spent all day reading her tweets, and she's not bright. She can barely write. And all these other dumb people like, oh, she's irreplaceable. She's indispensable. She's a genius. Really? If you think she's a genius? Whatever. But the point is, how can she, as a Harvard Law graduate with a New York Times job, coming from South Korea, how can she be an oppressed person? I'm totally confused.
Well, I don't know her personal experience, but what I do know is if you do look at other tweets that were sent to her, Tucker, there were tweets that were very crude and they were offensive. And again, so she was experiencing that, and sometimes, and I try to avoid doing this myself, I don't, again, condone lashing out, but of course, when you're a minority person and you're feeling attacked for being the minority person that you are, you sometimes lash out and say things back to the majority group.
I get it.
She was doing it as a form of...
So she's attacking the race of my children. Okay, my kids are white, I'll admit it. And so does that mean that I can go attack all Asians in response, as she did?
No,
I mean,
white
no
people have a long history of being in charge in this country. White people are still in charge in this country. So it's really hard to say that you're an oppressed minority, Tucker.
So
you're
only
not.
she gets to be the racists. But she's the rich
racist.
Harvard Law grad who works at the New York Times, but she's oppressed.
In her language back, but absolutely... No way, Tucker. White people are not the oppressed group. That's white fragility.
Oh, I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying, look, I'm not oppressed in the slightest. Never have been. I'm just saying, are these universal principles or not? And apparently they're not. Just want to know. Ethan, great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Chadwick Moore is a journalist in New York City, in Brooklyn specifically, and he joins us tonight. So, Chadwick, I'm kind of fumbling around in the dark here for the new rules, and I guess the rules are that you get to say things according to your race. Certain races get to say some things, other races can't say other things. Why is that not a racist worldview, like by definition?
Well, it is by definition, obviously. And what we're seeing here is a very dramatic and abrupt escalation of a creeping trend at the New York Times.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Yes, and we've always known the New York Times is left-leaning. Jill Abramson, a very brief stint there, famously said, we don't have a liberal bias, we have an urban bias. They've completely abandoned that. For them to so brazenly defend this person and knowingly hire her, given what she's said in the past, that marks a very steep change in what's happening at the New York Times. I do not think that this is coincidental that this happened now. It was revealed earlier this year, I believe in May, that George Soros invested $3 million into the New York Times company. And then what happened a couple months later? The New York Times published a glittering profile of him. Now, I used to freelance at the New York Times, and I'm very familiar with their ethics policy, at least as it used to be. In fact, I used to live in fear of their ethics policy because it was very intense and dramatic, especially their conflicts of interest and their sections on public neutrality when it came to political issues. This is clearly not the paper I knew. I was so shocked when I heard about the Soros injection of cash into the company. And maybe that's what we're seeing here. They just want to be either a Soros operation, a globalist operation, or they've decided to make a business decision to just be a left-wing tabloid like Huffington Post. They can no longer call themselves the paper of record. They are certainly no longer the glittering jewel of American journalism. That is completely out the window.
But to pick the race scab like this, really has long-term consequences that are starting to worry me. And I think a lot of people, I think we should be worried about this. Chadwick Moore, thank you for your insight into that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Tucker.
Speaking of New York City going crazy, New York is renaming a street after a dictator who committed racial genocide. For real. Why is the city council suddenly endorsing this? I guess because it's 2018. We've got details coming up. And Las Vegas police have finally released what they say is the comprehensive report on the Mandalay Bay shooting. That was, of course, the deadliest one-man mass killing in the history of this country. 306 days of investigation. What did they find? Well, just about everything except what we wanted to know, which is why. Police said they investigated 2,000 leads, viewed 22,000 hours of videotape, collected 250,000 photographs. After all that, police say they believe the shooter, Stephen Paddock, planned his attack for an entire year. He acted alone and was not connected to any terror group. They also say his finances were not to blame. He was not in any debt. He had lost a lot of money in casinos, though. So what was his motive? Police say they have no idea and that we may never know. And what about the slow response to the shooting from police? Well, Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo says that that is, quote, an internal matter, whatever that means. There may be threads in the story worth following up, and we will. Meanwhile, across America, statues are being toppled. Streets and schools have been renamed. We're in the middle of a revolution, remember, all for the sake of purging the memory of long-ago racism. But in New York, they have a very different plan. They're now honoring a genocidal dictator. Amazing. The city council, led by Jumaane Williams, who's a frequent guest on this show. If you watch, you'll know exactly who he is, running for lieutenant governor of New York right now, just voted to rename a street after the Haitian dictator Jean-Jacques Dessalines. In the early 1800s, Dessalines ordered the genocide of all white people on the island. That included men, women, and children. And he did it. It's what he is best known for. New York City apparently finds that impressive, so impressive, they're going to name a street after him. Seth Barron is associate editor of City Journal. He joins us tonight. Seth, thanks a lot for coming on. Did I ever state that?
No, I think you were right.
I mean,
you were right.
Okay, so what is this about? Exactly.
Well, you know, I think it would make perfect sense to have a statue or a street named after Jean-Jacques Dessalines in Port-au-Prince, the Haitian capital. Right. I don't understand why we're doing it in New York City. I mean, there are a number of Haitians here in Brooklyn,
yes,
near there. But, you know, this is advocated by the same people, Jumaane Williams and others, who want to tear down the statue of Columbus at Columbus Circle, who want to rename, you know, Stuyvesant High School because Stuyvesant owned slaves. So it's a very extreme kind of measure. I mean, if you recall, a year ago, Jumaane Williams was very much in favor of the Puerto Rican Day Parade honoring Oscar Lopez Rivera. I know you had him on then. Oscar Lopez Rivera was a terrorist who bombed a major historic landmark downtown and killed several people, including a cop. But this is who, you know, there he is. This is who the city is now apparently honoring and favoring.
What's so, I mean, there are a couple of interesting things about this, but the first is that multiculturalism isn't real. So we were told that multiculturalism is when lots of cultures kind of coexist happily and all that. This is really destroying one culture and replacing it with the new, a foreign culture. I mean, that appears to be taking your monuments down and putting ours up. I mean, that's kind of what's going on.
Well, I talked to one member of the city council, a Republican, who voted for it, for this street renaming, and he sort of indicated that this was like insurance or a SOPs. This way, this will protect Columbus. Like, if we give them this street for after Dessalines, then they won't come after Columbus. And I said, that's like the strategy of feeding your friends to the crocodiles in hopes that they'll eat you last. You know, I think that they'll have Dessalines and take Columbus eventually, when they want to, when they're ready.
But Columbus discovered America, and this is America, so maybe there's a reason we celebrate Columbus. Dessalines, whatever, I'm sure he had good points in addition to being a genocidal nutcase.
Sure.
You know, no one is monochromatic, but, like, what does it have to do with America?
Well,
nothing, right?
History's complicated. History's complicated, and everybody has their mixed, you know, their mixed story. According to Jumaane Williams, Columbus, Jefferson, Washington, it's all arbitrary why they're honored and Dessalines or Mugabe, I guess, aren't. So
I guess that's next, Mugabe. Yeah. Seth Barron, City Journal. That was a great story. Thank you for that very much. We're going to talk to Jumaane Williams, I think, next week about this. Well, Congress is obsessed with combating Russia, but doing almost nothing about an actual threat that we face from China, our greatest threat. Senator Marco Rubio just cast a protest vote trying to change that. He joins us for his first Fox News interview since casting that vote. That's next. By this point, it's pretty clear that China, and not Russia, is the top threat the United States faces globally. China has far more people, a much larger economy. They're also far more aggressive. Their hackers steal more U.S. secrets, military secrets, and intellectual property. Their state-owned companies have far more thoroughly penetrated the American economy. Senator Marco Rubio is one of the few lawmakers trying to spread awareness of the threat we face from the Chinese government. To that end, he just cast a protest vote against the defense funding bill. Afterwards, he spoke to us in his first Fox News interview following that vote. Senator, thank you for coming on tonight. So you have, for the first time, voted against the National Defense Authorization Act as a form of protest, if I'm getting this right?
Yeah, and hopefully to get people to notice, we did something about allowing this Chinese telecommunications company to stay in business. I personally don't believe we should be allowing any Chinese telecommunication company to do business in America because they use it as a tool of espionage. They do it all over the world. And what I mean by espionage is not just like listening in on people's calls. I'm talking about taxpayer-funded research at universities. They steal it, and all of a sudden it shows up in their products. I'm talking about intellectual property of companies and key industries. I'm talking about defense secrets, and we are creating an environment in which they can put backdoors into servers and steal these things from us. And let me just make one more point, because at the intro you kind of touched upon it. There is no greater threat to the United States because China seeks to replace us, and we're still struggling in this country because for the first time since the end of the Cold War, we now have a near-peer adversary, and a near-peer adversary that is looking to overtake us, and frankly, we're helping them. And we're helping them not just by giving them business in our country, but through trade practices that have allowed them to cheat and steal for 18 years.
There are reports, and there are many stories like this, but here's one that has emerged in the news recently. Google apparently is planning to do the bidding, in effect, of the Chinese government to censor its search engine in China, helping to prop up an authoritarian regime. What should we make of that?
Well, we should make of it that American companies, by and large, who like, for example, to march up and through the country here and take up on all sorts of social issues and lecture society, have no problem helping China censor, as an example. But it goes deeper than that. I don't know if you know or are aware of Project Maven, in which Google was working with the Department of Defense to help them with targeting, actually would save lives by allowing the military to avoid hitting civilians. Well, because of pressure from their employees, Google no longer works with the Department of Defense. However, they work in partnership with the university in China that provides all the technology assistance to the Chinese military. So it's just one more example of this rampant hypocrisy of American companies who are more interested in making a few dollars, gaining access to the 1.3 billion person Chinese market, but have no problem, on the other hand, cutting ties with the country that allowed them to exist in the first place, the United States.
So they're serving the police state but ignoring their own country. Is Russia doing anything on the scale that China is here?
No, very different. I mean, look, Russia is a country, the economy of Russia is $2 trillion. That's their GDP. That's the size of Italy's and Spain's. They have nuclear weapons. We've got to deal with them because they have nuclear weapons. They have some pretty good conventional capabilities, and they are going out and doing the sorts of things to sort of pit us against each other and sort of, it's not in favor of one political party or the other. They just want us to fight against each other. That is important. The Chinese threat is critical. Russia has no ability and no willingness to overtake us in the geopolitical stage. China seeks to replace us. And they used to hide that intention. Now they're pretty aggressive and open about it. And it's time we open up to that reality and start fighting back. We most certainly should not be helping them do that by allowing them to steal our intellectual property and our military secrets.
So why is nobody saying this? Why is every single news conference out of Washington about Russia and no one's saying anything about China? I find it odd.
Well, you know, we're in a better place than we were 2 years ago, but not where we need to be. You know, we spent about 17 years. The conventional wisdom was that China was a poor country, and if we just helped them, let them cheat, let them steal, because once they get rich, they'll behave like us. Didn't work out. That was a terrible idea, and we're paying the price for it now, which is why I support these tariffs. Look, I don't like tariffs. You know the best way to get rid of these tariffs is to be willing to impose them yourself in retaliation. That's the only thing they'll understand. And you're seeing the impact of it already. The Chinese economy is beginning to struggle as a result of this. We got a bunch of people in this country that want to unconditionally surrender or allow China to do anything they want in America so long as we get some crumbs for our companies in terms of doing a little bit of business over there.
As long as Google gets richer. Senator, thank you very much for that perspective. It's unusual and needed. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Up next, this week's final exam where we scour the Fox universe for the brightest bulbs to compete against one another to see who has paid closest attention to the news this week. Defending champion Katie Pavlich, who's won 6 or 7 in a row, is off this week. So instead, we have a very special showdown for you tonight. Janice Teen and Adam Klotz are both Fox News meteorologists and great people. The question is, which is the greater expert on obscure news? We're about to find out. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Tucker.
What an intro. I love it.
Great Janice Dean. Adam, I am not going to reveal my deep favoritism toward Janice Dean during the course of this game. I just need to get it out ahead of time. But good luck to you. Okay, do you know the rules? Let me repeat them in case you've forgotten. Okay. Hands and buzzers. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You have to wait until I finish asking the question in order to answer it. You can answer once I acknowledge by saying your name. Every correct answer is worth a point. If you get it wrong, you lose a point. The best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
No. Go ahead.
I'm so nervous.
That's the spirit. All right, question 1. During his show Monday night, Jimmy Kimmel tried to goad a celebrity guest into going after the president. This reality star refused to do that and said she had no complaints with Donald Trump. Who was it? Adam.
Kim Kardashian.
Kim Kardashian. Okay. Was it Kim Kardashian? Roll tape.
I know that you're not necessarily a Trump supporter. I know your husband, Kanye, seems to like him a lot. Do you guys argue about that? Is that something, do you talk politics and, like, have debates about?
You know what? No. I have nothing bad to say about the president.
I've never seen her before.
It was indeed Kim Kardashian. 1 for Adam. Congratulations, Adam.
I knew it. You were just quicker on the buzzer.
You know it. I know. It's a question of getting there. Okay, question 2. You can redeem yourself, Janice. Which Supreme Court justice has liberals rejoicing after this person said he or she planned to stay on the court at least 5 more years? Janice Dean.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. RBG. Is it Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Roll tape.
Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I gave you this for drama.
How she's got 3 names and we get to say them all. Announcing she plans to retire from the Supreme Court 3 years into President Trump's 2nd term.
I am 84 years old and everyone wants to take a picture with me.
To get close. That's it.
And you were right. Janice Dean setting up a tie, 1-1, moving into question 3. It will not be tied by the end of this. Here's the question. Over the past weekend, Barack and Michelle Obama were caught on tape dancing at a concert. Who was performing? Oh! Janice Dean.
Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Jay-Z and Beyonce, says the former Canadian DJ Janice Dean. Was it Jay-Z and or Beyonce? Roll tape.
The former president and first lady caught on camera at this weekend's Beyonce and Jay-Z concert, dancing and waving their hands in the air.
I can't take her dancing anymore.
About 1,000 people posted the moment to social media.
It's humiliating me, not you.
The Obamas are living their best lives. And why not?
Oh, Adam, she's a force of nature, I warned you. Okay, so it's 2-1. Now, we're going to question 4, and I'm just going to warn you, this is a legitimately tough question. I had no idea the answer. Okay. So I'm going to throw it at you. Question 4 is multiple choice. San Antonio Aquarium is the scene of the story. 3 people arrested there this week when they were caught on tape using a baby stroller to steal what kind of animal? Was it A, a penguin, B, a tortoise, C, a shark?
They did this so we can win overtime. It is C, a shark.
No! You can't put a shark in a baby stroller. Was it indeed a shark? Says Adam. Roll tape.
3 brazen fish nappers seen here on surveillance camera grabbed the shark by the tail, wrapped her in a wet blanket, placed her in a bucket, then tucked the bucket into this stroller. Within hours, the stolen shark was allegedly put up for sale on Facebook.
Holy smokes. I can't believe you knew that. I never would have guessed it. I would have said penguin or tortoise, but what do I know about aquarium theft? Okay, so now we are really in the ideal situation. Sudden death overtime. Final question. This will determine the winner of tonight's final exam. Okay? This is a weather-related question for our two meteorologists. So and it is this. A cloud in Texas is wowing the internet at this very moment because it has a very unusual shape. What does that cloud resemble? Janice Dean.
An angel.
An angel, says Janice Dean.
That's not right.
I know that you're such a good person that you would guess angel no matter what it is. Were you right?
Take a look at this stunning image. A driver capturing a cloud formation that looks
this on your ship this morning?
Just like an angel. Look at that. What do you think?
It looks just like an angel. And a man taking the picture while driving down a Texas highway, posting it online, calling it an angel cloud.
Right.
Janice Dean! Yes! I gotta say, Adam, congratulations for getting as far as you did.
If I'm being honest.
Very few people could have stood up to the force that is Janice and gotten even 2 points in. You did, and you get credit for that. Janice Dean, congratulations. The outcome was never in doubt, but I'm thrilled for you anyway.
Oh, Tucker, I just want to thank my mom and my dad and the whole Fox and Friends audience and Adam as well for showing up.
Yeah, thanks.
You got to thank your manager, as you know. We've got an Eric Wemple mug in the mail for you.
Oh, my
It'll be there soon. We promise. You guys were great. Thank you very much, and thanks for telling us what the weather's going to be so accurately for so many years. Great to see you both. That's it for this week's final exam.
Nicely done.
Pay attention to the news. Every weird detail all week. Tune in on Thursdays to see if you can beat our news experts. We'll be right back. Organic life typically requires oxygen to survive, but the creepy porn lawyer is a different species. Instead of oxygen, he survives on attention, which he absorbs directly through television waves. He'll do literally any TV show, except this one, unfortunately, though our invitation still stands and always will. Today, CPL got his daily requirement by co-hosting The View on ABC. Anna Navarro got so excited by having him in the studio, she suggested the creepy porn lawyer might be a member of the Holy Trinity rather than some lower-tier law firm. Watch.
A survey posted in Psychology Today wanted to find out why people fantasize about sex. So, Michael, do you have these fantasies or what?
Well, to be clear, unlike Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson, I actually believe in sex.
They don't. Yeah.
So, you know, of course I have sexual fantasies, but
he has
all of
5 kids. He definitely believes in sex. Tucker Carlson has a bunch of children.
But
I don't know what that means.
But all of my sexual fantasies involve handcuffs.
All of my sexual fantasies involve handcuffs? Now, the creepy porn lawyer is already creepy, hence the name. What could he possibly say to get creepier? He just said it. That seems a fitting way to cap a truly bizarre week. We hope you have a terrific weekend that is blessedly lawyer-free above all. Thanks for watching all week. 8 p.m., the show that's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. It was great to see you. Sean Hannity is next. Judge Janine sitting in. Have a great weekend.